Hello students, hope you all are doing great. Today we'll be learning comparison of fractions. So let's learn together. Comparing fraction means to identify if one of the fraction is less than or greater than the other fraction, or if they are equal. Now there are different situations where we compare fractions and we can follow the different ways to compare them. Let's first learn how to compare like fractions or the fractions with the same denominator. As you can see in the first figure, one part is shaded, and in the second figure, two parts are shaded. So the fractions with more parts shaded is always greater. So in this case, this fraction is greater. So basically when we compare like fractions, we just need to compare the numerators. So that means whatever numerator is bigger, that fraction is bigger. Like in this example, 1/4 and 2/4. Since the denominators are same, so 2 is greater than 1, that means 2/4 is greater. Let's check out another example. Now in this example, as you can see, in the first figure, 5 parts are shaded out of 8, and in the second one, 3 parts are shaded out of 8 parts. So as you can see in the first figure, more parts are shaded, so that means this fraction is bigger. So same way, if you have the fractions 5/8 and 3/8, I'm taking the same example, and we know that 5 is greater than 3. As I've told you, we have to compare the numerators. So 5/8 is bigger. Now let's quickly try a couple of examples. So in the first one, you can see 11 is greater than 10, so this fraction is greater. In the second example, since 5 is greater than 3, so 5/10 is greater. Same way, in the last one, both are having the same numerators, so that means both are equal. Now, let's learn how we compare unlike fractions or the fractions with different denominators. Now, let's check out this example. Again, as I've explained in comparing like fractions, that if more parts are shaded, that means that fraction is greater. Same in the case of unlike fractions. You can see here in the second figure, more parts are shaded. So that means this fraction is greater. But what if we don't have the model, then how we compare which fraction is greater? So to compare unlike fractions, we can first make these as like fractions, or we can convert that into like fractions, and then we can simply compare the numerators. Now, how we make these as a like fractions? We can make unlike fractions as like just by multiplying denominator of second fraction by numerator and denominators of first fraction, and vice versa. Like here, your second denominator is 6, so we have to multiply numerator and denominator of first fraction by 6. Same way, we multiply second fraction by the first denominator, or the denominator of first fraction, that is 4 here. So by that way, we'll be getting 3 times 6, that's 18, and 4 times 6, that's 24. Same way, 5 times 4 is 20, and 6 times 4 is 24. So now we can see we have like fractions. So we just simply compare numerators. So 20 is greater, that means 20/24 fraction is greater than 18/24. Now let's try another example. So in the first figure, there are total 8 parts and 2 are shaded. So the fraction is 2/8. And in the second one, it's 1/4. So we can see here, if you can see the shaded parts just from the model or the figure, then both are seems to be equal. Same way, let's check out without looking at the model. So how we compare it? So we have to multiply first fraction by the denominator of the second fraction, and that would be times 4. Same way, we can multiply the second fraction by the denominator of the first fraction, which is 8. so that we can make them as like fractions. So it becomes 8 out of 32, and this would be a 8 out of 32. Now that means both numerators are equal, so the fractions are equal. We can always compare unlike fractions without making the denominator same. As you can see, I've just written an example. So just by using the cross multiplication method, or in other words, this is also called a butterfly method. So we just need to simply multiply the first numerator by the second denominator and the second numerator by the first denominator. So 3 times 3 here we get 9, and 2 times 5 we get 10. So since 10 is greater, that means fraction 2/3 is greater than 3/5. Let's practice some examples. So in the first one, if we multiply 5 times 9, we get 45. And 6 times 7 gives us 42. So 45 is greater than 42. That means 5/7 is greater than 6/9. In the second one, 9 times 5 gives us 45. And then 3 times 10 is 30. So 45 is greater than 30. That means 9/10 is greater than 3/5. In the next one, 1 times 13 gives us 13. And 2 times 8 is 16. So 16 is bigger than 13. That means 2/13 is greater than 1/8. So far we have simply learned how to compare like and unlike fractions. But now let's check out comparing fractions in different situations. Say if we compare proper fraction and improper fraction. So we know that proper fraction is always less than 1 and improper fraction is always greater than 1. So definitely improper fraction is always greater. So we don't need to follow any of the method in this one. Simply check out if we are comparing proper fraction with improper fraction is always greater. And same way, if we are comparing whole fraction and the proper fraction, so definitely be whole is greater than proper because whole is equals to 1 and proper fraction is always less than 1. Now let's check comparing mixed fractions. So in comparing of mixed fractions, we always check the whole parts. So the fraction with greater whole part is always greater. For example, if we have say 3 and 1/5 and the another fraction is 2 and 1/5. Now we see that whole part in the first fraction is 3 and in the second one it's 2. So 3 is greater than 2. That means 3 and 1/5 is greater than 2 and 1/5. Now let's check in another example. So the fraction 3 and 2/3 and another one is 4 and 2/5. Now same way we can see that 4 is greater than 3. That means 4 and 2/5 is greater than 3 and 2/3. Now what if the whole parts are same? Then how we compare the fractions? So basically if the whole parts are the same, so we just need to compare the fractional part. For example, if we have the fractions 5 and 2/3 and another one is 5 and 1/3. So since the whole parts are same, so we just need to compare these fractional parts, which is 2/3 and 1/3. And since these are like fractions, so we just compare the numerator. So 2 is greater. That means 2/3, or in other words 5 and 2/3 is greater than 5 and 1/3. Let's check out another example. So 4 and 3/4 and 4 and 2/3. Again, since the whole part is the same, so we just compare these two fractional parts. So basically we are comparing 3/4 and 2/3. Now since these are unlike fractions, so we do the same thing by cross multiplying. 3 times 3 is 9 and 2 times 4 is 8. So we know that 9 is greater than 8. So fraction 3/4 is greater than 2/3, or in other words, 4 and 3/4 is greater than 4 and 2/3. Now we have already talked about how to compare like fractions, like in other words, if we have the same denominators. But what if we have the same numerators and the different denominators? Those kind of fractions with the numerator 1 and the different denominators are basically called as the unit fractions. Or there are some types of fractions where you have the same numerators but the different denominator. So how to compare that? Now say if we have the fractions 3/5 and 3/4, and we can see here numerators are same but the denominators are different. So the fraction with the smaller denominator is always greater than the fraction with the bigger denominator. So here we can say that 3/4 is bigger than 3/5. Let's try some more examples. Now here you can see 1/8 and 1/7. Again, since the numerators are same, so we have to check whatever the denominator is greater, that fraction is greater. So we can say that 1/7 is greater than 1/8. Same in the second example. We have the fraction 3/14 and 3/18. So since 14 is smaller than 18, that means 3/14 fraction is greater than 3/18. Now in the last one, since we have 10 as the smaller denominator, so we can say that fraction 5/10 is greater than 5/11. In our next video, we'll be learning how to compare more than two fractions or how to order them. Thanks for watching. If you're finding my tutorials useful, do not forget to share, like, and comment. And if you are new to my channel, do not forget to subscribe to get the notifications for more videos.